button down below so you are in the know. We go live each and every Monday here at this live workshop. But otherwise, we stream every morning, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 35 plus year pro, Fausto Pugliese, getting the job done there. Now, there's all of our students. If you're joining us on social media, Grant, Yehuda, Philip, Lynn, and Randy, Belle, Ravina, great to see her as well. Good afternoon, good evening, perhaps otherwise. Wiz from Prague, great to see him. Now, folks, I'll tell you what, I had a pretty shitty morning. Not trading-wise, thankfully, but a pretty shitty morning, though. I woke up, I tried getting my push-ups in, get my walk in. I ended up, nicking myself shaving. I ended up actually chipping my teeth overnight. Ow. Gotta set up a dentist appointment. So, why does that even matter here? Well, I'm trying to take my mind off of all that crap, and I get to my desk. Today is a Monday. We normally are not as aggressive with trading. We're normally not jumping into this, jumping into that. Not just because today's Monday, but typically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are better days of the week for news, for earnings, for any economic events. So I wasn't expecting much. My personality normally, at least here, is to be more calm and just hands off in pre-market. But I'm just trying to get away from all the other crap going on in my life beforehand. I get to my desk and I remember a couple of different trades that we were focused on from last week, from the end of last week. They were moving in pre-market. So I want to cover at least a couple of them, update you at least a little bit. BBAI we'll get to. That definitely is one from Friday, from the end of last week, that made this big run, extended run up. So we'll definitely have the chance to cover this. I did not get my hands on this trade, though, at least in pre-market. Maybe I could have, prior to 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock it bounced, a little bounce here at 9 o'clock. Maybe there could have been something there. I just didn't get my hands on this one. But there was another trade that we were focused on from the end of last week that ended up popping, that made this big move shortly after, like we always talk about. And that was NVIDIA. So I was on a couple of different coaching sessions, at least from the end of last week, Wednesday into Friday, talking with two separate students just as far as their positions, might be down on a little bit for right now. But I was telling them, hey, if we can get NVIDIA to try and break higher highs here, there's a good chance for what's called a gap fill. And we talk all about that in our curriculum, phase 1, 2, 3, all throughout there. But basically, NVIDIA gapped down here back from end of Jan. And over time, it began to push back up from the beginning of last week, all throughout. So here we are, at least going into Thursday, then Friday. We were looking for the gap fill then. So I got to my desk. I'm going through the pre-market watch list. I'm going through at least the trading room, seeing what Rich is calling out. Fausto, of course, above all, is talking about. But I already had NVIDIA on my bookmap page, at least, as I got to my desk. So I saw this begin to eke up over 130, and I took my first entry, at least from there. Very slow stock before it ended up at least breaking higher from 130 and 25 pennies. For a $130 stock, if this is going to have good momentum, it should be making that dollar push pretty quickly. So by the time it kept retesting 130, I took this on 50 shares. Listen, it's a Monday again. I'm not jumpy. I'm not trying to do big size, let alone normal size. Let me ask Luis. Let me ask Guy. Great to see Guy here joining us. He says music is still playing. Nah, you should be good to go at least, Guy. Just do a log out, log back in. Might be a little glitch from your side right there. But great to see Guy. Great to see Paul. And then otherwise, for all of us here, what is dangerous about pre-market? For any of our students here joining us inside our trading room, I certainly would want you to answer this question if possible. What makes pre-market so dangerous? There's something that we're lacking in pre-market that we need really all throughout our trading, at least definitely that we have once the market opens up. Yeah, exactly. A lot of us just writing that. Actually, all of us here, pretty much all of us, 10 of us actually. Lynn and Randy, Luis, Marcella, Gillis, Carrie, etc., etc., etc. So absolutely, making sure that you have your stops set. Well, in pre-market, we don't have access to stops. So for that reason, more than anything, regardless of Monday, doesn't matter if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever day. If it's pre-market, I'm trading smaller size. Since it's Monday, I'm trading even smaller size than that. So maybe I do 100, but it's my first trade. If I lose, it's not big money. If I win, it's not big money, perhaps. Maybe it could be. Later on it was. But it just ended up being to say, all right, this could start my morning off with a little profit if I'm right. I'm not trying to hit the home run right now. If it works out that way, great. If I take a pre-market trade in and out, and then once the market opens up, it starts to pop, I could try and jump back in, which is what happened, thankfully. So, at least to say, on the daily chart, let me actually go over it to begin here, because It was more from, it was like 129.40. No. It was 128.40 up to 129. That's what I was calling out inside our live trading room from the end of last week. I was basically alluding to the fact that we have one of my students right now is working with Marcella here, so she knows. Basically 128.40, 129, that collective area, if it were to hold over that price pretty cleanly, then I was thinking there would be a good chance for a gap fill. So again, that was from the end of last week into this week. So it started to inch up on Friday afternoon. I'm not swing trading at least this into this week. It would have worked out in hindsight, but I wasn't holding into the weekend. But it's to say, hey, maybe if this could push up higher going into today, this morning, even tomorrow, if it were to have done that. So yeah, maybe that would have been like the better price this morning early, like 6 o'clock at the crack of dawn. That thing bounced there. But we know that our better levels for NVIDIA, for something as expensive as NVIDIA is, it's typically off your $5 and $10 price levels. So 100, 105, 110, 115, all the way through. So that's where, even furthermore, as this begins to inch up and up and up and up, even though it actually doesn't reflect as dark red of a line here, it doesn't even show as big of a resistance. Looks like there's even more at 131, 132, and so forth. But 130, that actually was the stronger iceberg level from Friday. So, we had our chart level. Seemed as if it was holding even better under 130, right? Let's go back on this if I can. Here we are. Here's this big iceberg order back from Friday. This is from the end of last week. Nearly 700,000 shares were out there at 130. And you know what? It got close to it. Did it fill it? This would be pretty funny. Watch this. Did it hit that order? It did. Looks like this actually moved all the way up to 130, right at the buzzer, right at the horn, the buzzer. The ball went in. This ended up filling and testing a good chunk of this iceberg here at 130. Let's see if we can zoom in full. Now, this actually is extremely important towards the pre-market move. I didn't put this under a microscope like I'm doing now here. This is why Traders Talk is so important each and every Monday. If you're joining us on YouTube, join us inside our live trading room to get the full rendition. But Guy, Grant, Ravina, Roseanne from earlier, Carrie, Elena, Patrick, basically I'll ask them. Just get this number up here first. I'm excited to go over this because it obviously matters towards today's move, right? This is right at the horn, right at the buzzer on Friday. So there was about 264, nearly 265,000 shares of, volume that got filled there, a volume that got filled at 130. Well, when that order ends up getting hit, whether it got broken through or just tested, in this case, it just got tested. I don't think it broke over it. Either way, the same answer is to be said from you. What color shows up on time and sales predominantly when we're seeing this big iceberg on the ask getting tested? It's getting hit, getting tested. What do we got? Marcella first to the punch. I love that. She was all over NVIDIA today. She got 65 cents on it. It was a nice move. Yeah, Yehuda as well. Green, right? We're seeing big green coming up on time and sales. I mean, the answer is literally on the heat map. Everyone should have just been like, yeah, it's green here. Predominantly the dots, right? So, all right, well, what do we nickname green as? What's the nickname that we give green? It's, not the fancy schmancy technical name, but it's the nickname. What are we giving green as? Buying pressure, exactly, from Bell and Yehuda. So it was at the horn. The ball went in, right? It was at the buzzer, the horn, whatever you want to call it. We're coming off the Super Bowl. We're going on to March Madness now. I don't know if Butler's going to March Madness here. My team behind me, but we're going on to March Madness. The ball went in the hoop here, right? Basically at the horn. This ended up filling this order at 130, a bunch of it at least, and that's what we would nickname buying pressure. All right, well, from Friday into this morning, the more times that it keeps nipping and testing that level, it's bound to make that better breakout, right? So that was, again, Friday at 3:59 and however many seconds. Let me get this back kind of configured here normally for us. Again, it looks like there's a larger seller today at 131. It's about 53,000. But the more times this thing keeps testing and nipping and testing that 130 from Friday into today, well, it leads to that pop. So as long as this didn't tank and completely puke back below 130, fall back below like 129.75 here, I would have gotten out if it broke like a micro lower low. But thankfully it didn't. The only thought that I had on it was like it was a little slow at first, a little slow at least off the initial pop. And then after 9 o'clock, or maybe it was before 9 o'clock. Yeah, right before 9 o'clock, pardon me. But it ended up making that better pop finally from there. I ended up getting out on this trade, though, as it was beginning to pull back. So I didn't hold into this trade into the open. I didn't get out right here. It was on tiny size, so I'm not like trying to swing for the fences and hit a home run. Was that like 3 separate sport references in like 1 minute? Was that football, basketball, baseball? All right, so I get it from Fausto. Pardon me with all the comparisons and references there, but either way to say, as it pulled back, I took my profit right off. It was like right below 130 and 50 cents. So it was tiny money made, but you know what? Hey, I'm going to look for the same setup if I can once the market opens up. Because truth be told, well, of course, it ended up making a better push afterwards, right? And I did have the chance to jump back in on this pretty quickly after. I did break my 5-minute rule, which I hate doing, but given how much it was, moving up at least in the gap fill opportunity, I thought that there was great reason to expect more, but I didn't want to hold. There was a chance maybe it could have tanked, right? So once I saw this begin to pop, I missed it at first from 130. I didn't jump in right away here. It was as soon as it broke over 131 from there, but I jumped in slightly above and it was a nice move. Now, this is where I say, how much of this gap can we see attempt to get filled, right? I'm not expecting a full run all the way up to 140. I'm not expecting a run up to 145. I would love to see it, right? If we can get closer to 135 sooner in the morning, before 10:30 in the morning, like the sooner prior to 10:30, then we have more room to try and see it hit that level and more room to try and see it run higher from there. But you know what? Shit, if I can get in off 130 or otherwise 131 on my second trade, if I can see this go up to 135, if I can see it even go up to 134, that's a solid profit, at least within the first hour of the morning or first 30 minutes of the morning here. So, of course, as we know, NVIDIA ended up pushing up really well from there and made a pretty good job trying to fill the gap. Now, from here, though, like we had brought up, it's not a surprise that 135 became resistance because it's to what we said earlier. For a stock this expensive, it even reflects it on the option chain because you have strike prices on the option chain. The stock volume will drive the stock more than anything, and that drives the option. But I'm just kind of using the two together there. But it's just that at 135, yeah, you better believe that's your next resistance, right? Nearly 1 million shares out there on the offer. So the more this could get up to 135, the sooner it could do that. I'll think that there's reason, you know what? Shoot, we might start seeing this nip and test this 135 and break higher from there, especially as it's building up here at this point. So we're heading into 10 o'clock. I'm still in this from 131 and change and building higher lows. There is not a need to get out aside from just being like, okay, there's too many different stocks moving. I'm in on 3 other stocks. I wasn't at the time. It's just to say, if that were the terms, I'd be more keen to just get out even here, just take the money and run from here. I ended up holding on a little bit longer, so tried to make that push up to 135. I think I ended up getting out. It was like right after 10:30. Yeah, as it was ended up pulling back here. I thought it was going to break a lower low, and I ended up getting out. It's kind of off the low here. I kind of got out like right off the low here. So it was a little bit right after 10:30 as I was jumping onto a coaching call. But from there, it never ended up testing 135. It looks like it never ended up kissing 135 or trying to break over it for that matter. So essentially, yeah, you can't go broke taking the profit, right? Did come back down. There could be more room to try and see this stock fill the daily chart gap over time. But hey, it might not be today. It might be later in the week. It might be Thursday. It might be Friday this week. So again, NVIDIA is obviously a swing trade. It's obviously one that a lot of our students, Roseanne, Alex, a number of us, maybe Chuck, Yehuda otherwise, actually definitely Yehuda. I know that a lot of us are focused on this as a swing trade, and it will remain one. But this absolutely will be a good day trade still as well, as long as we continue to see higher lows and continue to see the higher high over 135. I'd like to think, all right, well, as long as it could hold over 135, as long as it could hold over maybe, this little dip point of support to complement that, there's reason to see more. So at least for right now, lower highs, essentially, I guess technically a small higher low building right now. Maybe it does try and push back up later on today. But this is where we always say, watch out for the orders out there on level 3, level 4 here. Make sure you get a new bid order stepping in here. you don't really have as large of a bid to come in, then it's going to be tougher to expect that buying pressure and tougher to expect this to try and smash through these orders on the ask. So that's all. All right. So, that's NVIDIA. That's like the first stock I was more focused on going into the open. There was a trade I took in pre-market otherwise, though. It was the BDRX. Those were my main two, at least in pre-market, that I was more assertive with. And again, I don't like being assertive, aggressive, whatever you want to call it for a Monday. You typically should not be. So even this, like, it was a $7 stock. Okay. After the market opens up, $7 stock, as long as the spread is tight, I could trade this on 1,000 shares. I did this on 100 shares. Now, the spread was not tight here in pre-market, so it's not even to say the pre-market, you can't set your stop orders out there. I'm going to reduce share size anyway. Just regardless, I'm going to reduce share size. But this is where I'll say, though, hey, the spread alone made this pretty dangerous to work with. Look at the spread right now as we're talking live. So that's just where essentially, at least, it took a while for this to build back up. I ended up taking this trade off 750. Now, this one inside our live trading room, actually, let me pull this up here. Check this out. If you're on social media, actually, you should be able to see this a little bit on the stream. And if you're inside our live trading room, then what I'm doing essentially is, and I'll try and clip this out, I'm basically just showing the BDRX chats from earlier today. So earlier this morning, right at 8:32 Eastern time, it was kind of like my first post. I wrote BDRX, pop. Let me actually just try and get this showing here. There we go. Probably looks a lot better now on stream. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So I wrote it 8:32 in the morning. BDRX pop. We posted the news about 4 minutes later. They received FDA fast track designation for ERAPA in familial words I can't pronounce. Listen, I got a speech impediment to begin with. I'm like dyslexic. I got a speech impediment. You expect me to read that? Come on now. I'm good with numbers, not words. I'm bad enough with numbers. So no, just to say from there, BDRX needs a big pop over 750. Otherwise, it will tank. I wrote that shortly thereafter at 8:36 in the morning. Quite frankly, this was so flat here within this chop, within the shake. I had to double check the news. I'm like, is this a buyout? If this is a buyout, I'm not trading this thing, right? It was so flat here. I was like, what's going on? And I double checked. It's not. It wasn't a buyout. It's like a stock popping off some pharma news. But that's where we said at least otherwise. 750 is a strong historical level. No surprise it tanked since it couldn't make a clean break over that price. That was at the time 8:44 in the morning. So, pulled back a bit here. Now, this is where I say, where do you think I entered this trade, as it ran throughout the pre-market morning here? Where do you think I took this trade? Where do you think our students hopefully got in themselves? It was right off that 750, right? So this is where I'll show you why 750 was so important, at least in pre-market. It was actually more from the initial pop. So I kind of noticed this initially from the first pop. It shook back down a bit. I saw this off the CVP. It wasn't as prominent or as sharp of a spike, but it did look like this was a little heavy around 750. I guess this is maybe 755 if I want to estimate. But right around here, there was some big volume that was being traded within that initial breakout, that initial pop or shake around here. So I'm thinking, okay, the more it keeps nipping and testing that, and there's a reason for this to try and move up higher. Maybe it can get close up towards 967 here. There's about 10,000 shares to sell at that price, right? So that was my thought, at least as long as it could break over 750. Now, 750 was even furthermore a historical level, though. I believe 750, yeah, look at this. It was 745, 750-ish, just back from end of October, end of November, early December. Bingo, bang, bong, right here at 743. I rounded up and I said 750. So with that, hey, if this could smash over 750, then I'm expecting this to run. Well, it ended up making that break. So this was on 100 shares. Wasn't big shares. I'm not trying to, shoot for the moon on a Monday in pre-market. But it was a trade that I felt confident in. Right? We brought this up in class back from the end of last week. The two most important words that we need to use are if and then. if then, meaning if this could break over 750, then there's a chance, there's a possibility for this to try and make a higher high or make a new move up, or try and get back up towards that first spike up in the morning. But if this does not, then there's no Josh, there's no entry, there's no business to be made here on this trade. So this ended up, of course, thankfully, providing that next chance where it popped over 750. And listen, you had to be there to take the trade because of how big the spread was. The orders are tiny out here on the book. I'm not saying that this was easy and like everyone should have gotten in. We can't think that hindsight, right? Like, oh, you definitely 100% should have. I mean, if it had a tighter spread, maybe it's easier for us to say that. If this was a little more tame, maybe it would be easier for us to say, yeah, you should have been more comfortable. This had a big spread. The tier sizes were very thin. So if you were not cognizant of the 750 level, if you simply were not following my callouts inside the chat board, you were not going to be as to the punch to get in right off of 750. Now, though, that'll kind of take me back towards the chat board here that we have, because otherwise, right? I mean, hey, 750 was a big level, but otherwise, once it broke over that, I said, let's see if this could stay over 750 here. Now I gave us a crazy price target. I gave us a crazy target here of like $17.50. Yeah, if the stars align perfectly, right? First big word there, if. That said, there are numerous levels to focus on as a target before that. 826 is one, then $10 as a psychological level. And that was at 8:48 in the morning, right? So at 8:48, I'm giving that out to you, basically saying, all right, well, 826 is our next price. If this can smash over 826, then let me ask our students here in chat. I see Charlene cleaned up on the NVIDIA trade. Congrats to her. Dennis, Kerry, Marcella, Grant, all of us here otherwise. When a stock smashes over resistance and it runs, perfectly off of it, what would we expect that resistance to flip into? What are we looking for that resistance to become? We might have a mover on another stock live I'm in on currently. I have my stop set on it, but I was kind of saying if it were to take me out break even, so be it. Looks like it's starting to move up here, SATL. We'll jump to that live in a moment. Yeah, exactly. From Marcella, Ravina, Lynn, and Randy, Wiz, Grant, Elena, all of us here in chat, Philip, Yehuda, Kerry. When a stock breaks over resistance and it smashes over it and runs, it's only 3 bars. Is this like an extended run time-wise? No. Is this a big pop and a run price-wise, though? I'd say so. Thing moved up over $1.10 in 3 minutes. So as far as like a time-wise run, no. As far as a price-wise one, yes, this is not just a little tiny little nip of the level. This thing blew the ceiling off, right? So that's where I'd be confident to expect that resistance at 826 to flip into support. So, from there, of course, that's what happened. I ended up selling half my position on this. It was around 875 it was. Right there. Let me actually show this in chat. Closed right out. It was 854 at the time I closed out. It was at 872. At 875, that's like the price I estimated. Going to cover this in detail in Traders Talk. There we go. And then the second half, I just took the money out as the market opened up. It pulled back, right? It smashed right below 826. So I had my stop set below this. It was like below these little lows. But once it smashed that, game over. If it's not going to make higher highs, it's going to make lower highs. And the more it does that, after making a pretty extended run from before, hey, I wanted 10. I wanted 960, that iceberg price that we saw from pre-market. What was it, 965? 969? That would have been nice. Didn't get it. Can't always get what you want, right? So you got to make sure you get out at least by the time we see things go the other way. I had my stop set on the second half of my position, like 50 stinking shares. But basically, that started my morning off. I felt really good because, thankfully, I had a little cushion money to work with. I wasn't trying to swing for the home run and shoot for the stars, but at least if I'm able to catch a couple bucks on a run, if I'm able to try and see the stock even break higher, great. That adds on to my already decent Monday morning. But if I didn't even take these trades, then I would just still have the same personality going into today, regardless. Like today's a crappy Monday, right? Normally we don't expect much. We are in earnings season, thankfully. There are companies that came off earnings from last week, and NVIDIA provided that gap fill for us, so that was good after the market opened up. But even outside of that, if you didn't, hit your day's pay, if you didn't, get green today or get in the positive, it's only Monday, right? So that was my personality going into today, and that would be my personality now if I were in your shoes there. If I, didn't hit my mark or my target or make any money, if I'm down on my morning, listen, there's still time for you to get back. It's 12:30 right now. So in terms of perspective, unless if you blew it on a trade and you're down a lot right now, to which I would instantly say, message me, private chat me inside our live trading room, get your coaching scheduled immediately. I'm open at least at 1 o'clock, 1:30. So I'll have the chance to work with students at least coming up. But even outside of that, we need to know why we're losing big if that were to be the case. If you're only down a little bit, if you're like break even right now, if you're up a little bit, there is still so much more time left for you to try and make your day. But wait till later. Wait till 2:30 p.m. Wait till 3 o'clock Eastern later in the day. Join us inside our live trading room, especially for that. We'll be following a new watch list at least heading into the afternoon. All right, so real quick, BDRX, NVIDIA, those are my two ponies in the pre-market. Luis here saying, I'm with Chuck, better to go and watch The Sopranos. Well, I'll tell you what, The Sopranos is definitely a lot more entertaining than me. No, I'm kidding, though. Chuck made a comment about that earlier as he was finishing up the morning. So Luis just chatting back on that. No, Sopranos is actually a series I have not watched in full. Can you believe that? I probably have some extracurricular homework to do then, right? I watched Breaking Bad, though. Breaking Bad's a great movie. Or a great TV series, pardon me. All right, what else we got here? Any other chats, at least from before, regarding BDRX or NVIDIA? No, I know, Luis. I know you're teasing right there. All right, folks. Hey, otherwise, though, we did pretty good on BDRX. We also did very good on a stock I did not jump into. Let me just get a price check on SATL. Okay, it actually hasn't gone anywhere since we started Traders Talk. It's kind of flattening out here, right? Man, this is very slow. Chuck was referring to SATL as slow. That's the stock that we were both chatting on earlier. I'm still in on this thing. I thought it was like popping back up. It obviously is not exactly doing that yet. Let's jump to a stock I did not take at all, and I wish I did, because this thing is actually flying back on up right now. Holy shit, this thing got halted on the way down, and surprisingly, this does not happen often. So do not expect like, oh, I should have definitely taken it. No, but when it begins to pop all the way back up from the downhaul, that's where at least you could say, all right, if it breaks resistance here, flips that into support after, there's a new run potentially on this trade. But let me go back on this from the morning. I did not trade this whatsoever myself. A bunch of our students did. I know Chuck got in and out on that a bunch, maybe Brian B., Alex Poe. Yeah, we had this on our morning watch list, right? The MNTS. So early in the morning, right? You can see that there, day trading morning watch list, BBAI, the SATL, a couple more, Reddit on there. I know a couple of us holding on to Reddit long term, but then otherwise, MNTS. So that's where I say, hey, BBAI was a great trade. NVIDIA was a good trade after the open. SATL may be coming up. I didn't get my hands on MNTS. You can't trade everything. You can't catch them all. So lose the emotion of like FOMO. Lose the emotion of like, I missed it. We can't be bug-eyed and watch 50 different thousand stocks at the same time. At least if you try, I doubt you're making consistent money. Trust me. I feel like from my time here being with Fausto as an instructor, let alone my own trials and tribulations, we're human beings, folks. We're not algorithms or supercomputers ourselves, right? We're not quantum, but it's just to say MNTS here had a big pop at 9 o'clock. Rightfully so. We had this on the morning list. Right away for this type of trade, I would just focus on the 50-cent levels in dollars because of the price. But otherwise, I would just even furthermore just focus on the dollar levels. 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc. So goes to show I didn't have any skin in this game because I didn't even have this up on my book map today. So yeah, there you go. It's my first glimpse at book map here myself. Pardon me. All right, so I would assume resistance. I would normally think of resistance to be at at $5, at $5.50, at $6. I still will think of that as support resistance on this trade. Until otherwise, I'm gonna still assume that. Where do we have our darkest red line going across the page, acting as resistance? What do we got here, folks? Where do we have resistance at least going across this whole page, or otherwise since like 9, 10 in the morning? So a pretty long line considering the window that we're looking at. For instance, I guess 625 might be your longest line, but what's the darkest red? What's the one that is still stretching out there for a good while? It doesn't disappear on the right side of the image there. Yeah, exactly. All of us answering 570-ish. Yeah, 567 for anyone trying to guess exactly right there. Yeah, 567. About 10,000, 11,000 shares. So that specifically is going to be a level. Unless if it gets pulled, unless if it shows up elsewhere, that is confirmed a resistance. Now, I will say, at least from the pre-market that we had, this sticks out. This is like, something that sticks out above everything else here. This is right before 9:30. Let's see. This is basically the market open coming up. So our largest spike of volume here, it's not necessarily like twice as big as everything else. These or this one. But, I guess 475, maybe that could become a level. Maybe. So I would plot that there. Now, otherwise, at least, by the time the market opens up, we 99% of the time are waiting the first 5 minutes. If there is something you are supremely confident in taking, and if it's getting closer towards 9:35 and you have your stop and risk management assessed already, it doesn't necessarily hurt. But I'm speaking to anyone here that's making like consistent 500 plus a day. I won't say 1,000 a day. If you're doing 500 plus a day, you know who you are, right? When we're in this conversation. So that's where I just say, all right, you could bend the rules a little bit. If you're not someone who's making money consistently, and I don't mean like one trade each day, I mean actual money, I would wait those first 5 minutes. It's as simple as that. That's how we teach it. That's how I want you to focus with it. I've been doing the same song and dance for, I'll say, nearly 11 years as we round the calendar, at least into this 2025. But otherwise, at least I have my risk already assessed if I were to take this. I didn't jump in, but I would just say, within the first 5 minutes, if this pops, maybe it could break over 475 and run. But within the first 5 minutes, I need to see what happens at 9:30. Right when the market opens up, typically you're going to see a big dot popping up on time and sales. So I don't think I see that there, though, on this one. Let me just go right through to the tape. Actually, play a little investigator right now. Give me a quick moment. Was there an even sizable opening print on this trade? I didn't see it from Bookmaps, so maybe not. This thing's flying right now. So we're going to get to this live. No worries, no worries. We're going to get to this live. Purpose of Traders Talk is to go back on trades, really put these trades under a microscope, at least after the fact, and showing you, all right, well, why did we call this out, at 9:30 in the morning? I don't know if there's a big opening print here. I'm not really seeing one. Yeah, I don't really see a big opening print here for this trade. It's not at 9:30 at least, so... All right, well, that's where I still say at least wait to see what happens then in the first 5 minutes, because it popped up and then it dropped, right? So unless if there is a big dot, big opening print, you still want to wait either way, but even furthermore for that. Popped up to begin, pulled back afterwards, then what happens? Well, it ended up pushing back up. It broke over 475. What's easy to say in hindsight is it held back over that and ran, right? So at least if you were focused on that 475 level that we just noticed from pre-market, all right, well, after it breaks under, then back over, this is after 9:35, and it gets the job done, right? So simple as saying that. Now, otherwise, though, your next, respectable level, it's very tough to get out of this trade. You would assume $5 maybe, possibly, should, be a level, but it's not confirmed. It's not like there's some massive iceberg popping up here throughout the morning at $5. That's an assumed level. So maybe it could be one. But otherwise, though, your next respectable, notable level was really not until 567. So this made this pretty damn tough for you to try and get a real trade-off of here this morning. Here we go. So it moved up, it hit 560, or it came close to 567. Hit 562 is a high at 941, and then came back down from there. This is where, again, once more, it kind of held 471 as a better bottom here, but 475 was already pre-built, so it did a pretty good job in essence, still holding support. It did get the job done essentially here. But otherwise, look what happens still. By the time it crashed into 567, the first time it tests any resistance, I'm expecting for that resistance to hold. Now, the more times it can nip and test this level afterwards, if it has strength and it keeps pressing up against it here, and then later on, even once more, a couple minutes after that, I would say that there is good chance to expect that breakout. It's like we always talk about here inside our live trading room. The more times it nips and tests that level in a smaller period of time, a smaller concentration, I would be a lot more bullish. Now, that's what happened with NVIDIA. That's why NVIDIA broke out so quickly off that 130. It was from Friday, but it ran all the way into this morning in pre-market. This is the first time it's testing this level here today. So I wouldn't be as bullish on a breakout over 567 right away here. The more it does nip and test it, I would be, but it didn't get the job done, right? Now, obviously what you see is what I see. This ends up coming down. One more time for the crowd. It basically held a higher low loosely right off that 475. Goes to show how damn strong those pre-market levels really are, right? Now, with that said, one more time back up. Now, it broke over it. It broke over it again. It's the second time technically it's breaking over this big level today. Well, what was the criteria I said, folks? What was the criteria I gave you just before? The more times it tests that level, what was it after? In a smaller time frame, in a smaller window, a smaller span of time. Tested this level here at what, 10:07? It retested it where? What, 11:20? So an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 11 minutes has gone by. I would like to say that's a lot of time, at least in this trading realm that we're a part of. So that's where I wouldn't be as bullish right away. The more times it does test it, give me a few minutes after, more times it's nipping and testing from that point, I would be. Now from there, it crashes. This thing got clobbered, got absolutely smoked. Now, what happened? Why did this stock get smoked? Why did this drop so fast? Well, we actually talked about this earlier inside our chat board. Brian, one of our students here, wrote the news actually earlier. It said basically it had tanked. Chuck actually did very well on it right beforehand. He got out at 547. He said having to pick the meat scraps off the bone today. Yeah, I mean, this was a little tough breaking higher, right? Wasn't it at first? We'll get to this in just a moment. But Brian did bring up the news, actually pretty crazy. This had an offering, $5 million registered offering at the market ATM under NASDAQ rules. Now, let me ask here inside our live trading room. Luis, Brian, Patrick, I got Chris, got Robert C, Elena. Who here is unfamiliar, does not know, unfamiliar, uncertain of what a direct offering really is? Direct offering, common stock offering, what do we got? Anyone here unsure, uncertain? Wow, no way. We got actually former U.S. President Bill Clinton joining us here on YouTube right now. Great to see Bill Clinton. I wish I could show your message right now, Bill, on the chat right now. You got a user on YouTube named Bill Clinton. I doubt it is actually the real Billy C. But otherwise, got a few of us joining us on YouTube right now. Now, a few of us are uncertain, unfamiliar with a common stock, direct stock offering. Basically, they are adding more shares to the amount that's outstanding. More shares out there, but they dilute the stock price once that news hits. Sometimes you'll see the price per share listed. Sometimes it's just the total amount, like overall. But Brian just posted the basic headline of, hey, there's a direct offering on MNTS. And as soon as that news came out, this thing got smoked, got crushed, dropped, and got halted on the way down. 98% of the time when this happens, you want to write this stock off. Be like, it's probably not going to make a good move back up for the rest of the day. Probably. Now, of course, as you see what I see, it came back up. It held 475 here pretty nicely as resistance. So once it smashed below our pre-market level as support, guess what perfectly held as resistance at least? No surprise there. Now, though, what is surprising is that it broke back over 475 and flew. This thing had a second life once again. It's pretty crazy. To the point where, oh no, it couldn't hold over it. I thought it was going to get halted on the way up. I thought we were going to work with a runner right now as I came back to this live. What the hell happened? Well, this is a pretty rare move to see happen coming off a downhaul, coming off of direct offering news. So to see it push up like this, I wouldn't have been as bullish if I was not doing this workshop. If I was not here, if I was just Josh the trader, I would not be as like jumpy here. Now, I would be jumpy if it were to keep testing this resistance over time, and especially since it ran nicely off of it. It popped pretty well, about 50, 60 cents off of it. I would be for this resistance to flip into support. Now, this is where we talk about, though, you don't want to catch a falling knife, right? You don't want to try and buy this stock as it's dropping. That is how accounts get blown up, right? If you're still listening to me right now, then you probably didn't, catch a falling knife recently, right? Because that is truly how, accounts and financial lives get lost. But here, though, by the time it breaks under 567, 568, whatever, it holds under it pretty well, like damn near spot on, and then just tanks, right? So pretty instantly, as it goes under, it stays under. I look for under and over, look for that slingshot type of move if I'm looking for support. But this doesn't do what we need it to do. This is where I say all the time, there are stocks that do what I don't, or there are stocks that do what I'm not expecting it to do, but if it doesn't meet my entry criteria, I might miss out on a runner. A stock might pop without me. Guys, it happens every day. I mean, as we're in Traders Talk right now, there's thousands upon thousands of different stocks that we haven't thought of right now that are moving. Like, hey, we haven't brought up the Bitcoin stocks recently. We haven't brought up the quantum stocks, RGTI, IONQ. Hey, we're not in those right now, right? We're missing out on them. I bring this perspective here because we're always missing stuff. So I don't care about missing stuff if it doesn't meet my criteria. This is where, though, here I scream from the mountaintops, stick to your freaking criteria. Don't just take a trade to take a trade. Don't just jump in to jump in. This didn't do what we needed it to do. And now it's definitely done. I would not be expecting this to come back up to 567 because this was already a fluke to begin with. So unless if this is on like crack right now or some like drug, like tripping out, at this point now, since it's not flipping this cleanly into support as I would expect it to, then we're moving on. We're done with this thing. At least that's my perspective right now. If this gets back over 567 later in the day, you tell me. You remind me. You flag my attention on that because I'm not going to be calling it out as much. I'm not expecting this to push back up at this point. So basically, that's the one stock or one of two stocks I really didn't get my hands in on today. It was the MNTS that a bunch of us did. A bunch of us, again, cleaned up on that stock early in the morning. So Alex get 60, 70 cents on a couple trades, actually. Chuck in and out. I think Brian may have gotten some there as well. But just to mention, at least, between MNTS, then for me, the other one was SMCI. A bunch of us in our trading room caught a piece of this, right? We could only focus on so much at a time. So a bunch of us, cleaned up on this. I didn't get my hands in on this one. That's okay. It's still pushing up right now. They got earnings out, I think, tomorrow afternoon. So, pretty good swing trade right now back from last week. It did fill a gap recently back from the end of October. It did already fill that gap pretty nicely. I mean, this truly depends on how much shorts are out there for this stock, because after this fell off a cliff back from the end of last year, from summer to the end of last year, when their accountant basically ditched them, and they said, hey, they're not being transparent or honest. There's probably a lot of people that are short this stock. So if they have good earnings, if they're expecting some announcement ahead, shorts got to cover. This might look to make a more volatile pop over time. I don't know what the expected earnings move is by, I think it's tomorrow afternoon maybe. But it'd probably be higher than I'm seeing for other stocks. This is a more volatile stock. That's just something I know of. But we'll see if this could hold over 39.50-ish as support, going forward, because this was pretty good support back from end of August into beginning of October, month and a half. And it should be resistance here. Broke below it, should be treated as such. But today, clearly, held under it pretty nicely. Now, on the initial test of that area, it blasted right over it. So, hey, this is actually a good example of a day trade example here, because on the initial test, the initial break of this level on SMCI, I wouldn't be bullish. I would not be. I'd be sitting on my hands here like, all right, probably pop and drop. It's 11:30 in the morning. This was already moving up since 8 o'clock in the morning. There's a good chance this could be more of a reversal or a head fake. All right, this defied my logic. This defied what I would expect it to do. But if I'm trying to get in on this trade now afterwards, well, it broke over resistance and it flew. All right, well, guess what? Resistance becomes support. I'm looking for it to be at least under, over, holds over it after, run. It doesn't get more simple than that, right? So there's a clear difference between the two. Obviously, one did what we wanted it to do. The other did not do what we wanted it to do. But at least for MNTS, if it's not going to do what we need it to do, what we want it to do, need it to do, let's say need. It's more of a necessity, right? Because there's plenty of things I want, but if it doesn't, do what I need it to do, then I'm not jumping in. I want Bitcoin to go to 250,000 in the next month. I don't think that's happening. So, that's where you got to say you can't always get what you want, but here, this needed to be support. If it wasn't, then it's a lost cause. Going back to SMCI, this was certainly not a lost cause because it did hold over it as support, right? So, basically running through a number of different trades, at least that we had from today. We have earnings out this week as well. So let me actually get that for all of us here. One moment. Try something here. Now, again, if you're on social media right now, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, as I say, make sure to follow us down below at cybertradingu. Make sure to follow us directly inside our live trading room. And then otherwise, you're going to have a pretty good ability to follow us each and every day and then follow the morning and afternoon picks, our watch lists at least here. All right, so here is the earnings calendar for this week, for the remainder of this week at least. So we have McDonald's this morning. We got not much today. Not much today, really, to be honest with you. Tomorrow we got Shopify in the morning. We got SMCI Supermicro, like we just said, in the afternoon session tomorrow. Upstart been a pretty hot stock of late. That should be a pretty interesting trade-off earnings. Lyft, focus on Lyft. They came out with news this morning actually. Partnership with Mobileye, MBLY. I think MBLY was a much better trade today, but Lyft earnings tomorrow afternoon. That should be interesting enough. What else we got? CVS, we'll trade from time to time here. I think CVS dropped off quite a bit from the end of last year, or rather, pardon me, from the end of 2023. Yeah, from the end of 2023 it was, right? So it's actually moderately within our price range now. So CVS could be an interesting one to follow off earnings. Then really, like, the main attraction for me this week is Bitcoin-related stocks. So, of course, Supermicro, like we said, but Bitcoin related, we got Robinhood, and then we got Coinbase. Robinhood and Coinbase. So those two I'll look to keep a further eye on. Last topic actually before we finish up for Traders Talk here today. Had a chat about this from a student early this morning. They're asking me basically like, hey, I thought that you'd see a better move on a lot of these Super Bowl stocks going into today. And they're like, I didn't really see any good activity out there. Well, it's not surprising, right? Actually, I made a tweet about this last night. I posted about this last night on my own personal Twitter. I'm not on there that much nowadays. It's like an echo chamber. It's like everyone's just screaming for attention. So, I tried to build up a tiny following at first, but it's not worth the squeeze. So I just had this comment, though. Like, I wanted to post it because I thought I would get a message or two about this morning. And I was correct on that, but I wrote this actually last night at 7:30 at night. I said, too many people focus on Super Bowl stock plays as the game is being played or afterwards. You're late to the party. They are mainly swing plays that should have been determined weeks ago. This is not the first Super Bowl. This ain't the first Super Bowl out there, folks, right? If you weren't a trader back during, I guess, Ebola or West Nile or like any other major disease or epidemic, pandemic, SARS, then COVID was like your first big one, right? All right, well, after you learned what happened with COVID, you should retain the same experience going forward for, hopefully it doesn't happen for a long time from now, but the next pandemic, right? But just to say, this Super Bowl thing, well, It's not just once in a rarity. It's every freaking year. Every year there's a Super Bowl. Every year there's advertisers. There's big money going around. I think it was $8 million to air a 60-second commercial this year. Pretty crazy, right? Now, this is where, though, like, if you follow Super Bowl, you watch TV, you watch your commercials, you know the same advertisers are out there, like, every year. It's Budweiser, it's different food companies like Doritos, Tostitos. You might have, like, Uber Eats doing their own thing, right? Coca-Cola is famous for their Super Bowl commercials, right? Now, there might be smaller companies that will benefit from this, though. There might be smaller companies that weren't around a number of years back that now have the funding to have their first Super Bowl commercial. All right, well, we know actually what companies have commercials weeks in advance. Like, things get announced, but let alone these commercials got leaked like a week and a half ago. You know that, right? So this is just where I tell you that, hey, like, going into the day today, I was not itching for Super Bowl stuff because a lot of these moves were already fixed in. Now, there were a couple surprises perhaps. For instance, like, if you're just focused around a smaller company, I say smaller in quotations because it ain't Mag 7. It's not, Google. It's not like an Uber or a Budweiser otherwise, Anheuser-Busch. But like, Instacart, Hims. Hims been the hot hand of late. They had a commercial out there this year. That might see some better overnight action. However, the big mover was T-Mobile because they actually came out some real announcement in their commercial. Like, they had actual usage with their commercial time. They didn't just promote like, oh, we got cell phone service. No, they announced a major partnership with Starlink within their commercial. So they had the overnight gap up like 8% or something. But, if you're wondering, like, well, hey, you got all these people betting on DraftKings. Why is DraftKings not going up? It's only up 0.2% today. You're late to the party, my friend. Look what happened back from January. Bounced from 36 up to 42. So this is where I tell you these moves happen in advance. I would be one to say that the Super Bowl is a seasonal play. Every year there's a Super Bowl. So you might want to call it the Super Bowl season. You could say it's seasonal, it's cyclical, etc. That brings me to just, a comment I made on one of my swing trades. I'm still riding out on. This thing's absolutely smashing it for me. TKO, right? I told you weeks ago, when it was the day I took it, I told you about it at 143. So really, it's just to say the reason I took this trade is because it is seasonal, it is cyclical. But I'm not waiting until the end of March, early April for me to jump in when the season happens. You know what I mean? Like, this is based off of wrestling and WrestleMania and the whole big to do with that event. So I provided my explanation in a previous Traders Talk in a previous video. It's actually clipped off on our YouTube channel as well. But it's just to mention the reason I jumped in at 140 like a month ago is because that event is taking place at the end of March, early April. Look what's happened since. You got to do this in advance. So again, this is not your first Super Bowl. It's not mine either. That's where a lot of these longer term moves, if they're going to make any sort of announcements, that's more out of left field, we'll try and day trade them. If T-Mobile wasn't so expensive, I'd be a fan of day trading this move today. If the order book was better, I'd be a fan of day trading this today because of the surprise announcement with Starlink partnership. But outside of that, that's just where, like, maybe Hims had a good move here today. Good little bounce this morning early. It did actually wash out the overnight gap first, so that's pretty interesting. Washed out the overnight gap and then made the slingshot. So as far as just knowing where your levels are, 42.55 is probably a pretty clear level to work off of heading into the day today. And it's just something that we take a lot of time to cover in our curriculum, coaching program, etc. But the more I can keep nipping and testing this level over time, held it as support, basically, and then ran up higher from there, right? So, from that point, it's just to basically mention, as far as trading these stocks off of seasons and announcements, the Super Bowl, do it in advance. Plan it out ahead of time. I mean, even if you look at like Budweiser, let's just shoot from the hip here on Bud. This thing was tanking heading into the end of last year to begin with, so you don't want to catch falling knives to start. This is tougher for me to just tell you, oh, just jump in right here. right? It really is. It's tougher for me to just say, oh, just jump in right here at 46. This thing's been dropping like a lawn dart. So you need to see something build, but at least its dimension, yeah, this thing's negative today. It's not doing too good coming off the Super Bowl because it already kind of bounced. And if this is as much of a move as you'll get off the Super Bowl move, then that's not good, because look at the overall trend here. It's been very much down. So, once the momentum dies off from that seasonal move, you got to look to get out, take the money, and run. So kind of relating that back to like my TKO position here, by the time it's mid-March, maybe even end of March itself, I'll be more keen to just get out and take the money, because I'm not expecting much more from there. All right, folks, hey, we are going to wrap up. We're going to finish up Traders Talk. We conclude each and every Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Got a couple of coaching calls. I'll be jumping on soon. I'm free for right now. But otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to send over a private chat message inside our live trading room, at least that is. If you are on YouTube, on Facebook Live, etc., hey, subscribe right to our channel tomorrow morning. 35-plus year pro Fausto Pugliese will be back on right at 9 o'clock in the morning. We have a big week with podcasts and guests. Big webinar set for Thursday this week as well. So stay tuned. Make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button down below. Otherwise, just go right to ctu.co/trial. Let me actually get this up for you here right now as we wrap up here. Give me a quick moment. There we are. So if you go right to ctu.co/trial, it's going to take you right to this landing page right here. Join us inside our live trading room for a week-long trial. Again, you'll have the full camaraderie, the full chat board, access to pre-recorded workshops. We do this live every Monday, but you get the recordings and the full renditions of other classes and workshops on top via recording once you join us as a trial member. But otherwise, for all of our members and students there, I see Louise, Kathleen, Grant, Gillis, Brian, all of us there otherwise. Hey, we'll be back on, at least inside our live trading room. Next audio broadcast will be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern later on today, folks. And with that said, hey, enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Become a Cyber Group member today. Just click the link below and receive all these amazing products and a world of knowledge for just $9.